Welcome back to Approaching Infinity, the show refocused on all things finance, innovation, technology. Today I'm pleased we have a special 4th of July edition of Approaching Infinity, where I'm pleased to feature my friend, Mr. Andrew Devon Stephenson. He's the founder of Zera TechBridge, a company focused on helping veterans gain certifications so they can gain entry into cleared employment, the DoD, and other agencies. Mr. Evan Mills, he has a myriad of experience from Amazon to Microsoft, supporting sales, technical program management, all in the software community. And Mr. Don Randall, retired Army colonel with over 33 years of experience in government and co-founder of Zera TechBridge. I want to welcome you all to the show. I know I didn't do that justice, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to give your hero's journey and where to come from. So starting off with Devin.
Thank you, Justin, for having us. It's such a pleasure to do this on the 4th of July, patriotic day. Couldn't ask for a better day and a better setup. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Justin, for hosting us and having us. Devon Stephenson, co-founder of Zera TechBridge. We founded back in May of 2024. Went through a few pipelines. Went through the FAU pipeline, the veterans classes, and then also the NSU pipeline. What we learned along the way launching the company is it's not easy. Secondly, the reason why we launched, right? The reason why is to fill this tech talent gap shortage. Prior to the Trump administration, I worked with Justin personally, supporting special forces. And then prior to working with Justin, I was in Afghanistan for many years, still a reservist in the Army Guard, but I worked with Don Randall. And Don did a lot of work and consulting for different governments on behalf of the U.S., anywhere from Saudi to Kabul in Afghanistan. And what we've noticed is that along the way, across the board, everywhere we go, is a tech talent shortage. Not just now because of what Trump did with Doge, but more so as technology increases and improves so fast, the upskilling and the placement of current workers need to be upskilled, certified, and placed in those positions that are opening up. And there's a big gap, and the gap gets wider daily. So that was the reason behind it, as well as a no-noise portal. So if you can imagine you're a kid, you're 18, where would you start? I mean, my son right now, he's 15, he'll be 16 next year. Where would you start? So I want to kind of guide him and his entire generation, as well as veterans. Give an opportunity for veterans to come back and serve and have a pipeline. Well, where do you start? What pipeline do you start in? Do you start online with Google? Do you start with doing some ChatGPT? Do you do the Coursera 28-day course? Or what do you do? And who holds the authority in what you do to have your resume improved and placed? So we're that no-noise environment, launching all of our MVP products, our minimal viable products, in the fall and winter of this year. And as prior to the launch, we did the FAU and the NSU cohorts, as well as the Emerge Americas conference and the Veterans of Expo conference. And I'll toss the reefer.
Oh, yeah. First of all, congratulations. I completely agree. There is a gap. And that's why I'm so glad you and Zera are addressing this bridge. And I just want to give a quick aside, too, to Mr. Mills. If you don't mind, too, do you mind introducing any more details that I missed? How'd you get involved with Zera as well?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me. Yeah. Devin, good friend of mine, so always happy to support you. So yeah, Evan Mills, I've got a pretty varied background in IT. Started out very technical, come a long way since living in Columbus, Ohio, right? So I worked in retail IT there, got headhunted by Microsoft in 2015. I relocated to DC, out of the gate, no clearance. First customer, White House Communications Agency. And that's how I got cleared, because I had to get a security clearance to work there. So worked for the White House for about a year and a half, 2 years, commuting from Northern Virginia all the way into the White House almost every day. That was years of my life I'll never get back. But so very technical, starting out at Microsoft. I covered everywhere from the White House to Army Cyber Command, HQDA, ASALT. Eventually built my career, essentially modernizing any program of record system that had a Windows computer attached to it. Everything from FATADs to, training systems for Apache helicopters. Took my stab at program management. That's right when COVID hit. Was supposed to relocate to Seattle, but that didn't happen. So I had to work from Tampa, Florida, with a team of people at about 3 hours time difference, shipping out Windows, Microsoft products. But so that was learning experience. And then that's when I came back to the DoD side, got into more of like technical CTO type sales. So I really enjoyed covering special operations. So that's kind of where, and of course, that's how we all met. So as Microsoft covering special operations, coming to SOC South, built all of the tactical mission networks in the cloud and trained everybody up on that. Jumped over to Amazon, where I took the opportunity to cover special operations, but also combatant commands. And that's where I kind of am really passionate about what Andrew's going through, because I firsthand see the gap. I saw the gap with all the customers. If you try to take a combatant command and try to modernize and go to the cloud, it's not happening because the tech talent is just not there to support it. Not only on the contractor side, but even on the government civilian side, probably even worse. They can't spell cloud. So that's what brings me here. It's why I'm very passionate about what he does. I personally have mentored a lot of people coming out of the military. A lot of them work, at Microsoft and other large companies. Super passionate about that and making sure that people get their opportunity. Glad to be here.
Really well said. Myriad experience is definitely helpful. Sure, hone your skills over the years. At least you're down here, warmer weather in Tampa rather than Seattle, DC.
Absolutely.
And then last but definitely not least, Mr. Don Randall. Do you mind giving a quick intro about yourself, co-founder of Zera TechBridge, and how you got involved and met Devin in the first place?
Yeah, thanks, Justin, for having us. Devin's kind of been my inspiration on this piece because I'm definitely an Army knuckle dragger as far as technology was concerned, but I have a great appreciation. We spend a lot of time solving problems, leveraging technology. And what we found was exactly what was just spoken about by previously is that there's a huge gap. And, on the uniform side, on the civilian side, and the contractor side. So everybody just reverts back to what they know. And it's not necessarily the right way of doing business. So I think this is, for me, it's a great opportunity to work with Devin. I enjoy, he gives me a lot of energy and excitement, teaching an old dog a new trick. But additionally, I can see where, especially when we see what's going on with the Ukraine, what's going on with Israel and Iran and the Middle East and really all over the world, the leveraging technology and who can leverage it the best is going to win the day down the road. So I really think our ability to help not only the mid group and older group of workers, but actually go out there and really promote STEM throughout the United States and at high school and younger college group, and give back, because that's what us older guys are supposed to do. That's kind of why I wear the gray beard, is because gray beards are supposed to give back, not leap people over. People have to learn through certain things, but to at least be able to leap through some of the gaps that we had to trudge through that really shouldn't be there, and make our country a lot stronger, and make the civilians of this country, or of all the people of this country, a lot stronger. So thanks again for having us and giving us this opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, thank you. And I like that. Yeah, beards have to give back. That's a great one. Hopefully one day we all can do the same. So you all mentioned the gap, right? Yeah, I know it myself personally. So I do want to hit that a bit more for the audience who may not be as familiar with what this gap is. So if you don't mind taking us more or less from square one, right? Say you want to get a clear job. What is the problem when you're just coming out transitioning, or say you're in college?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through, kind of like walking the dog through what the current market looks like. Right now, you have to go through a security clearance process, and that's either tied to an Intel community sponsored school with very limited resourcing as far as who gets a security clearance based on their mission set at the school and what pipeline they're tied into, what government agency they sponsor or support through that sponsorship. So what Zera is doing is streamlining the sponsorships of the schools, one, to open up the ability to get the clearance much quicker, as well as an immediate tie-in to the reserve components, which there's 14 reserve components for DoD, and all the other 16 different agencies, not just DoD, to streamline the, let's just say, matchmaking process of that tech talent. So the tech talent is those youth, the universities, even like Don was saying, some of the seniors in high school. If they're just given the environment, given the opportunity to have the ability to say, hey, I'd like to opt in, I like to swear in, I like to opt in and support my country through my brain using my technology's talent, why not? They just need that. Half the battle is knowing. So knowing is half the battle. That's one avenue to get the clearance. Now, once you have the clearance, you need the environment to do the work. So a lot of reserve commands could fill their ranks with that tech talent because they're already pre-qualified, or they could be hybrid students with reserve components and going to school at the same time. So they could subsidize their school and tuition by serving the country. Kind of like those other NATO countries do. They have mandatory 1 to 2 years of service. This could be the technologist wave going through our country of supporting the country through tech as AI integrates in every single industry. As all of us have seen, from Justin to Don and Evan, we've all seen that it is impacting from today and every single day into the future. AI is not going away. There's going to be the ability to get certified and upskilled, that's part of that gap. Secondly is the reservists. If they don't go to school first, but they get their clearance through a reserve component or active duty component, then they have the ability to start their career journey with it. And that's where we tie in the TechBridge. Is this isn't just a once you log in and you're done. This isn't like going to CarMax and just ordering a car and you're done. This is a lifelong login. This is your upskilling journey and path, which we call Bridge Builder. And also the Zera Tech Talent Portal, the ZTTP, the Zera Technologist Talent Portal, like the college football talent portal. You go in, here's your resume, and then you can opt in with any other agency or any other school that says, hey, I want him because he meets certain thresholds along his career path. Kind of scratches the question.
No, that answers it too. That's well illustrated the gap. And I know, like Don or Evan, if you want to add to your experiences of seeing this gap as well, because my stories.
I live and breathe it like every day, especially, being in sales and trying to get, customers to modernize. I'd say special operations maybe is kind of an aberration, but, from what I've seen, like from the green suitor side of things, right? You have the 2-year PCS cycle. So it's very hard to get in, learn something, maintain that, and then off you go, to another, deployment, command, wherever you're off to. On the government civilian side, a lot of those people are just, they're lifers. They're there, they're going to retire there. They're way behind the curve in a lot of respects, at least from what I've seen at the combatant command level. And then the contractor level, right? That is you look at Southcom, for example, right? That's a city's contract. That's like $100 million a year cap or whatever it is on the contract with many, many, many butts in seat. Yep. But a lot of times, as soon as those folks do skill up, they move on to bigger and better things. They go make more money somewhere else because they're skilling. So the gap is not just, it's like holistic, right? Only recently, I think the Army started actually paying technologists like for their MOS, like you would getting jump pay, right? You just now started getting pay for technology. I think that was fairly recent, if I remember correctly. So it seems like, things are catching up, but the talent gap where he can fill that gap. I mean, you look at any job rec and you require a, active TSSCI, poly, whatever that may be. A lot of folks don't have that. You have a lot of talented people, but they just don't have that. And I think that's the bridge that Zera can help.
Exactly.
The gap that they can bridge.
Any thoughts on the gap or feedback how Zera answers the gap?
No, I agree with everything that was said, but I'll kind of open up a new area that we touched on just a little bit. Is that you see a lot of, and it's probably happened to everybody else that's right here on this podcast, where you get somewhere in your life and you go, well, I wish I'd have known that years ago. And a lot of times you won't go backwards, or maybe you can't go backwards. And I think what we do, especially when you start looking at early college students and high school students, is educate, inform them on what are the opportunities. And just because you opt in doesn't mean you have to complete the process. But if you don't opt in early, then there's going to be a long flash to bang by the time you say, hey, I want to get a clearance. It's going to take, like my son-in-law, he graduated from college and he waited almost 2 years before he got his TS security clearance. It's not because there was any problems in his background. It's just he didn't know until he got hired. So if we can open up opportunities where people prep themselves or prevent themselves from doing something that would prevent them from getting a security clearance, or like Devin said, there's a whole bunch of opportunities that could get them pre-qualified. And then once they're ready to go into the job market, there's a quicker flash to bang from when they get hired on to when they get their clearance. Our objective would get that down to zero, where there's zero time. A person gets hired, they in process, and they can go straight to work with the proper security clearance is the desired end state. But if you don't educate and inform people to try to prep themselves for that up front, you'll never achieve that accomplishment.
Well said. And then just to reiterate the points too, where there's definitely this gap. There is a whole host of high school seniors, just early grads, or just maybe even transitioning veterans who do want to continue serving, as you said. But the gap, the ability to get that clearance is just the time delay, right? As Don said, that makes it a little bit cumbersome to get through that whole process. And the demand for clear technical jobs within the DoD and other agencies is massive. So Zera aims to be that pipeline, holistic, end-to-end, whether you're a high school senior transitioning, enlister, or veteran, or honestly anyone else who just wants to serve. Now, I do want to focus on more or less like why Zera, right? So maybe a little bit more of a deep dive on, say, I'm a transitioning high school student.
Yeah.
You know, what do I do? How do I get into the system?
Sure. So just background on the name Zera. Zera is Hebrew and Aramaic for seed, and seed is planted. Like if you plant the seed correctly, it'll grow. It'll grow fast and strong. At the foundation of our logo, I put the cross. I'm a Christian, so I definitely have to praise our God. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here at all. Like I did too many years in Afghanistan and had some pretty close calls. Now I could probably attest as well, but at the foundation of everything I do, I put God first. So that's why I put that logo in there. And I'm from Michigan, so sorry, Evan. I know he's an Ohio State guy. I'm a Michigan guy, and it's just the way we're born and raised. But I put the symbol of like Mackinac Bridge there with the bridge of code going into the logo. So that's a little background on the logo. And the TechBridge, of course, is a bridge into technical fields. So that's a little bit of like the deep dive of what we thought about for the logo and some of that. But to answer your question, what would a high school student do to get in? As we launch in the winter, we want to open up nationwide and regionalize the efforts based on alignment of location and alignment of the Intel Community Schools and the DoD Innovation Network schools, as well as the FFRDC, so the federally funded research and development centers. Those all have tie into schools and high-level labs. They're just missing the point is they need the opportunity to provide their students the ability to streamline the clearances. Some of them do it with some STEM initiative programs, and some of them don't. And why should just the local kids that are luckily located next to like an FFRDC and luckily has a father or mother that's been in that knows the value of a clearance for a career, why give them that opportunity and not open it up the aperture to the whole United States? Because as we all know, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, all our adversaries, they're not waiting around, and they're dictating and delegating who shall do the opposing cyber threats and the opposing AI threats. So as a country, we have to tie everything together, and that's the whole point of the tie-in. So going back to the question, if you're a high school kid, open up the ability to sign into the platform, profile, gamify their profile to the point of it really matches the youth trend of the Roblox, the Fortnite, the leaderboards. I mean, my son gave some very good PhD level insights. Like, where's your leaderboard? If you don't have a leaderboard, I want to see how I rate against my peers. So that's where ZR2 came in with a provisional patent. Is we have a rating and ranking algorithm as well as a matchmaking algorithm that has a provisional patent filed. So we can then have a proprietary rating system for those youth that they sign up. So they sign up in the portal, and then they can earn an upskill designations how we see fit through the authority given to us, which we're working with all these universities and with the PhD in education, helping us place the designation process for data analytics, data scientist, artificial intelligence engineer, and a few others that will add on to the future, like agentic engineering. So they can upskill in place. And then within that upskilling, or for their reserve component time or their active duty time, they up their profile rating and then enter the TTPs, like entering a talent portal, and then they can proactively and offensively get hired in with a matchmaking algorithm, and then they're placed. So that kind of scratches that itch and that question. But going back to it, that bridge builder product that we're launching as well within the talent portal and within TechBridge, the bridge builder is like your career builder. It's really like doing diligence. It's a due diligence platform with no noise. You're not going to spend $20,000 at this degree in underwater basket weaving. No offense if that was your degrees, but where's the applicability in tech? You know, you've got your latest cloud Nutanix certification, or you got your latest cloud AWS certification, as well as a Palantir cert with that designation. So not only do they have the cutting edge certifications, they also have their rating and ranking upped locally, regionally, and globally to get hired in, to get those high level positions filled quickly and efficiently.
Really well said, too.
Yeah, I just want to chime in as an example of why this is so critical, right? So I have to use my son as an example. He's 22 years old now, but at 19 years old, he was very interested, self-taught in software development. And I did an introduction for him with a partner company that I worked with. It just happened to be former owners, a former soft guy. And they do, augmented reality, little Planet twins and things like that. So he got an interview and got that job. 6 months into that job, got a top secret security clearance. Now he's 2 jobs later making ridiculous money for a 22-year-old. But think of the millions of people that don't have that opportunity or that someone to help kind of point them in that path and get them over that sort of hurdle. That's where this falls in, because there's millions and millions of high schoolers that can probably do that stuff equally as smart.
Oh yeah.
But they just don't have the, the on-ramp, so to speak, to get there, to get them cleared so that they can solve some of the problems, the real world problems that we're seeing within, the Department of Defense today from a technology and modernization. So that, I like to use that example as why this is such a critical path.
Completely agree. And really well said. But I know we can even have current case studies, right? With former coworkers of ours who kind of over the alpha, so to say.
Yeah, so we had one student / contractor. He finished a master's degree at University of South Florida, just didn't have his clearance. So we did our manual matchmaking before we did our before we're launching our products. We manually did the matchmaking on the back end, and we got him his top secret clearance through our network, our Special Operation Forces network, through Don's channels and my channels being deployed, as well as our big Army, big Air Force channels, to get him his clearance. That forever changed his life. I mean, that put him on a trajectory and path with his family that he can now went from, let's say, for example, I don't know his pay, but 80 to 90K and almost double. I mean, 120, 150, 160, now that he has that high level clearance. Expressing the value of a clearance to a career is the whole point here. That's the whole, what's that word called? The value, the market value, the value prop is the value of what a clearance does and the value of learning tech at this time. That's the value prop.
Hey, Devin, I think too, we're talking about these individual cases, which are great. They're great examples. But I think on the big picture and the strategic side, as we've seen from a number of sources and validated, there's about 500,000 shortages within the government. So there's a huge vacuum. So as we talk about these case by case, and yes, the eaches are very important, but we're attacking 500,000 shortfall and the manpower required. So this is a huge task and very important.
And that's so today. I mean, there's 500,000 vacancies for mid to high level tech talent. And the previous administration had a tech talent task force. So I'm anxious and curious to see what the new administration launches to get after that tech talent vacancy, the big vacuum or the shortage.
Likewise. And that really, highlights the problem. Putting a number to that gap, 500,000, I'm sure that would grow every day as we become more integrated with AI, as our adversaries continue to develop. And that 500,000 is going to get, pretty big in the future.
Yeah.
So the fact that Zera can address that, and we're starting now, it's a really good way ahead.
And also, if you put it, and Don could help a little bit with this perspective, with just knowing history, like back in World War II, 2 days, the patriotic kids, the 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, they were signing up. They were dodging drafts or anything. They're like, I want to serve my country. So this is the new generation or era to say, hey, I want to serve my country. I would like to not only start my career, but also serve in some type of capacity. And this is the new capacity, your cyber, your space, your high-level tech jobs, filling and helping and supporting those different sectors. Space Force Ops, that's growing tremendously. Air Ops, and every agency across the air is growing tremendously, as well as AI and autonomous air, land, and sea vehicles. So they're going to have the tech talent with a human in the loop, like your RAG workflows is human in the loop workflows. And Don just texted me yesterday. Army is opening up a artificial intelligence either designator or MOS, the military occupation specialty. As of yesterday, they're going to launch it.
And I think we've seen, the future of warfare is somebody probably sitting behind a keyboard. I've seen it firsthand, with some things with Ukraine, but I think that's evident where things are going. It's not necessarily going to be ground troops on the ground. It's going to be somebody sitting behind a keyboard, running a drone or programming it in some way, shape, or form. So I think that's clearly, that's where we see things going.
And it's going to redefine ROE, so rules of engagement. When you have your bots and your robots fighting this other country's bots and robots, have we entered war yet, or are we just fighting? So it's going to redefine the battle space as well. And as we progress and transition to AI-driven every industry, that will come up. Your autonomous vehicles are engaged by an autonomous vehicle opposing force.
It's definitely growing here, but I can see it.
And I think that's, and what that opens the door to is it goes back to, if you go grab the average person on the street, they think that you're going to be an infantryman shooting a rifle, you're going to drive a tank, you're going to drive a truck, you're going to fly an airplane, and they don't realize all this open space for this technologist that to do this. So that's a real important part of the counseling module within Zera, is to help counsel, inform people again, that what those opportunities are. They don't have to be out there. I do believe in the Marine Corps mantra is a rifleman first. You kind of got to be. But understand that just because I'm a technologist or a scientist or something doesn't mean that I'm ruled out of the military. I think that our education and counseling piece will help properly inform them and capture these people that are needed.
I do want to touch on, I know we talked, at length about Zera. Like as a company, I can see the talent pool that's cleared. As a high school student or other personnel seeking a clear job, I can go into the platform and go through the pipeline and seek data to implement. And I know you're targeting a later this year launch, right? But what else do you see for the future of Zera? I know we touched on a few topics just now, but long term, what do you see Zera doing?
I foresee every single Intel community school, so they call ICCAE school, time with an initiative to opt into the talent portal and almost have like a regional or state level rating and ranking, like who ranks higher. Like instead of like US News, like where does US News hold their authority? Don't know. Is it congressional? We're going after the congressional authority to say, hey, we're the authoritative, like a Moody's ranking system. And Moody's does get their authority from Congress, I do believe. Quote me if I'm wrong, but I did a little bit of research on that they are the authoritative ranking and rating of whatever industry that they do. So it's, I think, some of the financial market. But we're doing that for the tech talent, and we're doing that for the teaching of the tech talent. So as we progress with Zera, we're web scraping the whole nation, and we're saying, hey, nation, if you offer AI certification and you're peddling that to the youth, we're due diligence for them. You're ranked on 343 out of 1,500 available certs or schools. And beware, student, if you sign up, that's where it ranks based on our authoritative rubric and model that we're vetting with current and hopeful administration. Secondly, is we have a consortium of professionals in the PhD realm and the government realm that are addressing and helping with our authoritative models with the ZR2. So as we gain that authority to rate and rank, we're providing that due diligence to the youth, saying, like a digital assistant to our kids, your future kids, and the future youth of this nation, saying, hey, if you go this path of data analyst, let's say Harvard's ranked second or third, or University of Texas ranked 1 or 2, if you go on this path, but they're veteran friendly, or they opt in with the STEM initiative because we have the Zera TechBridge partnership with those ICCAE schools, as well as those Department of Defense Innovation Unit schools that are partnered with the UARCs, the University Research, as well as the FFRDC channels in their research. So it's another 30 schools. So they're properly aligned already for the ability to get a clearance as well as to finish your school program. So you're knocking out 3 or 4 laterals
in parallel.
Yeah, in parallel. So as we progress and launch these services, it almost makes sense to use it to streamline your career, to save time, money, and resources, if that makes sense. And I'll turn it over to Don if you want to chime in a little bit, Don.
That's a good analogy of that part, because there's two sides to this. There's the student understanding what they're buying. Am I going to the dollar store, or am I going to a more high-end store? That's what they need to know. What they need to know, the quality of what they're purchasing. But then, having been a consumer, when I was in the uniform side, when technology was kind of starting a while back, as a consumer, so we're going to have to help inform the consumers of what's the difference of me hiring Devin or me hiring Justin when they both have Cert A. Okay, one's from one organization, one's from the other. Okay, what does that mean? So if I'm hiring a HR person, or if I'm the person that you're going to work for, I need to understand the difference. So it's also going to be informative on I'll call it the consumer side, whether you're in the HR path for the hiring, or you're actually the person that is getting work for, and you're doing your interview, or you're trying to execute something. You need to know, did I buy a moped, or did I buy something, on the high end side? And I think that's going to be important as well as the consumer.
I think Zera is well postured to scale into the future. You have the pipeline. I can see the clear value proposition, and you have a really strong team behind you. So
thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. And just the last thing to say, we're not the end all be all solution. We welcome competition. Right now, we're just looking at the competition landscape, ClearanceJobs and LinkedIn, to address those two pools of, let's just say, talent. They don't necessarily address or highlight the upskill and certification pipelines. They have digital badging, which is great. we're going to offer digital badging too, as well as focusing on the customer and focusing on both the B2B side, so the government side, the B2G play, and the other schools. So schools, government, and personnel entering, those are the three focal points of supporting them. And if we focus on that, the non-US citizen solicitations, especially in LinkedIn and especially in clearance jobs, the bots, there's adversaries all in there, both platforms. We're cutting out all that noise. You have to have an intake form pre-vetted, as well as if you're joining the service, we're implementing a pre-ASVAT test so the youth can further gamify and rate their profile to say, hey, pick me proactively, because it's going to turn into a more competitive landscape. And the kid on the farm should have the same ability and know-how to vie in for a tech job as a kid in the city next to a university or next to a government entity as a kid out there on the farm. You know, comparing it to basketball as well. Kid's 6'6" already at 13 and can shoot a three-pointer. Why not give him the same opportunity if you could translate that to fast keyboarding and learning agentic AI as well for the government?
That's fair. I mean, and this might be a controversial take, but I mean, honestly, like as you look in the future, like most tech jobs, a lot of those kids aren't going to college. They learn those through gamification. They learn it through Roblox, you know, some of those, you know, games that they grew up with that kind of started teaching them those coding skills. You know, unless you're a doctor, an attorney, you know, yes, you go to school for those things, but I think, you know, you'll start to see a trend that people coming directly out of high school now jumping into these types of tech jobs is probably going to be more of a trend. Now, again, that might be a controversial take, but that's just, you know, my opinion based on what I've seen, my situation with my son. That's exactly the path that he took out of high school, directly on ramp to a job, you know, supporting the Department of Defense. So I think that's going to be a huge play, especially with the scale and growth for Zera.
And that, to address a little bit of the younger generation, they do a lot more diligence. They know how to use chat. They weren't really taught it. They just figured it out. Like I was talking to my son a few days ago. He's like, oh, ChatGPT told me this. I'm like, son, you got to see where that authoritative statement came from. So vet those sources. So he's already using and implementing chat and doing diligence. So it's a whole due diligence generation. So they're going to want and need the Zera due diligence platform. We do hold the authority to do rank, and we don't care. Like, we are providing that care to the youth, to the veterans, to tie that back in and help them.
I completely agree. See the way it's trending. You know, it's an interesting time to be alive for all of us.
Yeah,
That's true.
Gents, as we're wrapping up, we do have to do this thing at the end of the show. If you had any words of wisdom, advice for our audience, regardless of topic, you know, does anything come to mind?
Yeah, Don was mentioning this. We're opening it up to like virtual assistants, like veterans that want to give back. And we're looking for, in the future, and we'll launch in the winter, is like a virtual mentor system of like, hey, I'd like to volunteer a few hours to give back to youth or give back to a fellow vet or an active duty member. Because it means something to take, but it also means something to give. So if you can give back just like your time, and time is one of the most precious things to give. If a veteran has the ability to give back, or if that service member that's retiring out has something to give back to the youth, we want to open that mentoring network up in Zera as well for volunteering, just to help give back, like a platform to give back, not just to give a service, but also it's a two-way service.
I like to go on back. Graybeard's got to get back.
The Graybeard give back.
Yep.
Evan, Don, is any?
I think the only thing that comes to mind, you know, if I'm talking to my younger self as one of your audience members, you know, I would just say that, you know, no challenge is too big to overcome. So if you're coming out of high school, or you're a young person, or even maybe trying to restart your career, you know, this path, technology, I mean, this AI, this is all the way of the future. Obviously, it's not going to replace people. It's going to require a person behind the keyboard to make it work, and make it work in a responsible, right way. You know, that phrase imposter syndrome pops up a lot and is a real thing. You know, I would just say, you know, if you're looking to jump into something like this, you know, it might seem daunting, but, you know, don't let that stop you. Just plow through it, you know, step forward and make it your own, I guess. It's probably the best.
Hey, Don, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I concur with both, Devin. What you mentioned and what I've been mentioned as well is that if you wait till you're comfortable to jump in, you'll never get there. And this is very uncomfortable for all of us, everybody on this podcast. Everything we do is a little uncomfortable, and you got to stretch yourself. And when you're a little uncomfortable, you know you're roughly where you need to be. If you're comfortable, you're sitting back on your heels. So you got to be a little bit uncomfortable to move forward. So appreciate Justin hosting us and giving us an opportunity to kind of to at least verbally, virtually give back a little bit as well.
Thank you guys.
And thank you, Limitless Capital.
Yeah, of course. And if our audience wanted to learn more about you or Zera, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, just go to our website, ZeraTechBridge.com. We're also launching the gamified Discord. So we're launching Discord. I'm learning, like Don was saying, get over your fears. So I'm learning Discord because the youth, they love the Discord. And they talk a lot of trash on there with the gaming community. So I'm learning. I'm getting in the gaming community. We're launching the website. And then, like Don was saying, to kind of recap, and everybody don't have fear. Just jump into it, get into it, and learn. Yeah.
Completely agree. Gents, thank you again for joining us. To our audience, thank you for joining us on another episode of Approaching 50. And happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July. Thanks, Don.
Thank you. 4th.